Hi everyone, Anne here, your time travel guide. Are you ready to take a trip back in time? Come join me as I tell you a little bit about family and community life before the city of Laverne existed. California has a very interesting yet complicated history. It was first inhabited by the Native Americans who lived together as a family, and together as a community they enjoyed the natural landscape and the abundance of food. Then, about 250 years ago, the country of Spain claimed California and colonized its Native Americans. After Mexico won its independence from Spain, California then became a part of Mexico. When California was under Mexico rule, the Mexican governor granted the Rancho San Jose to Ignacio Palomares and Ricardo Vejar. The rancho was so large that Ignacio Palomares' portion of the rancho covered the entire city of Laverne and parts of Pomona, San Dimas, and Claremont. The Palomares and Vejar families formed a community that was known for hospitality to travelers. They held fiestas, rodeos, which we now call rodeos, had a school, and they each had a Catholic chapel on their property where they performed baptisms, weddings, and funerals. Descendants of both of these families still live in the area, and their practices of hospitality, faith, and the celebration of special events continue to this day. About 50 years after the Rancho San Jose land grant was issued, there was a land boom in the area with the exciting news that a railroad was coming to town. A Los Angeles businessman, Isaac Lord, bought a lot of land in the area because he wanted to create a town. Other investors really liked the idea, so they decided to build a large hotel to accommodate all of the people that they believed would be coming because of the railroad coming to town. Isaac Lord even named the town Lordsburg after himself. It turns out that the land boom was a land bust. Though some people bought property to live in Lordsburg, no one ever stayed at the hotel. In fact, the hotel later became a college, and the building was used as the first building for the University of Laverne. Once the college was established, many people came from the Midwest to further their education or to enjoy the California sunshine. They helped to create the core values of the growing town, which we still value. Now, let's meet Laverne's former mayor, Don Kendrick, as he tells you the story of his family and how they helped influence community life in Laverne over many generations.
Hi, my name is Don Kendrick. I'm sitting in front of my house on 3rd Street, and I want to talk to you a little bit about some knowledge that I have about the community of Laverne and the heritage that I have with it. I am 5th generation Laverne. I come from the Bixby family, which came on vacation to this area north of here, more toward the foothills, in 1883 on vacation with a husband, a wife, and 3 kids. The daughter of the 3 kids is my grandmother, so these are my great-grandparents. And they came on a 3-month trip, and they ended up here and spent quite a bit of time. 2 years later, they hooked up that horse and buggy and brought all their stuff and settled here in 1885. We've been here ever since. Significant contributions by my great-grandparents. One is that my great-grandmother carried the petition that started the high school, Bonita High School. There was no high school in the community, no public high school, so she carried the petition and got the required signatures that started the high school. When the high school was started, they needed a school board, so my great-grandfather, L.H. Bixby, was on that school board, one of 3 members representing the 3 different communities that the high school served. Another really cool tidbit of information is that through the naming of these communities, the community that they lived in, which is now North Laverne, was not named. They didn't have a name for it, and my great-grandmother came up with the name Laverne. A little bit about my history in the community. I've been here since I was born in the late 40s. But my history and what I have accomplished in Laverne is really significant in that who it came from. And it wasn't just me. I am a product of my mother and father. My dad came here in 1929, started a chicken ranch, which I was raised on. Started working when I was 7 years old on that chicken ranch. Never played sports because I worked every day after school and Saturdays and Sundays. So I have a great work ethic thanks to my father. But Dad was very involved in the community. Dad was on the school board for approximately 15 years. Probably half of that was in the elementary school board, which it wasn't a unified school district at the time. And the second half was on the Bonita Union School Board, not unified, but Union School Board. After that 15 years, he became involved more in the city and was on the Planning Commission for 15 years until the late 60s when he retired. So combined, probably somewhere between 30 and 33 years. There's a great article written about my father of the 33 years that he was involved in the community. Probably one of his all-time legacies, in my opinion, is that it was his idea when he knew that the community was going to start expanding, that we enlarge our commercial base. And so it was Dad's idea to put commercial development along Foothill Boulevard. And my father's name is on the original general plan, and it incorporated commercial along Foothill Boulevard. So we have a great downtown, but we also have a great Foothill Boulevard, and that's pretty much the idea of my father. My mother, school teacher for a long time in the elementary school, here in Laverne. Originally, today it's Roynan Elementary School. At that time, it was divided Roynan and primary, and she taught third grade in the primary. But she also started the first Girl Scout troop in Laverne, which is significant. So when you look at that and you think, well, how did Don get involved? Don got involved because Mom and Dad were already involved. And my first involvement was an idea that came about from a conversation that I had with our city manager at the time about why couldn't kids growing up in Laverne have the same opportunities that he and I did with the citrus and really the values that have been created over a long period of time in Laverne. And so with that idea, I started doing some research. And I am very proud to say that from that research and getting over between 20 and 25 people together with ideas, that we started a hands-on history program. The school board and really the superintendent that saw the value in this program, and it's now completely incorporated within the school district program for the third and fourth grade. So I'm very proud of that. Eventually I was asked to be on the Planning Commission, so I put my application in, spent 6.5 years on the Planning Commission, ended up being chair of that. And then I was asked by a retiring city council member to take his place on the city council. At that time, I said yes, reluctantly, after I couldn't talk him into continuing to run, because I thought he was a very valuable city council member. I ran and was elected by the citizens. And 4 years later, when I couldn't talk John Blickenstaff into staying as mayor, I became the elected mayor of the city of Laverne and was mayor for 11 years. So that's kind of that. I grew up in Boy Scouts in Laverne. I have sat on over 50 Eagle Scout Board of Reviews, and we have some amazing young people in our community. I'd like to talk a little bit about the values in Laverne and why they are what they are. I think the values in Laverne are as high as any community. And the reason, I think, is how the community started. The real defining moment of the beginning of the city of Laverne, Lordsburg at the time, but we'll call it Laverne, is the churches. And when the hotel was built, it never had a paying guest. It was a big building, big wood building, beautiful. I've never seen, I mean, it was torn down before I was born, but it never had a paying guest because it was a land bust. And so what are you going to do with this thing? It cost $150,000 to build this thing in the late 1880s. Well, 3 or 4 years later, they sold it for 10 cents on the dollar, $15,000. And it was a train, not an engineer, but somebody who was on the train that happened to be a member of the Church of the Brethren, more back in the Midwest, and he thought that would make a really good college. And so that building, when it was sold to the Church of the Brethren, became a place where young people could go not only to college, but they also had some other education opportunities in there. But it started the Church of the Brethren in Laverne. And the Church of the Brethren has great values of family, and that is where it started. Other churches were here, Methodist churches here, but you know, there's a saying that I grew up with, there's a gas station on every corner. It almost seemed like there was a church on every corner as well. And everybody went to church, and the values that were created about helping people and being honest and doing good things were all kind of came from that attitude and atmosphere. Laverne was a pretty small, really small community, but it was also a community that grew slowly. And I think with the growing slowly, we kept those values in place. Great thing about this community is our American Legion Hall. It's not called that anymore, but it was a building built on the corner of Bonita and Wheeler and Magnolia on the south side of Bonita. It's a building that was built by Laverne residents that were World War I veterans. It was a building built in the early 1930s. My dad came here in '29, and he quickly got involved, and when he could spare some time, he went over there. He helped build the ranch, so he was very handy, had a lot of knowledge, so he helped build that building. That became a place in Laverne for a lot of happiness. My dad ended up being a commander for a year. There's a lot of commanders, but he was one of them. So there was gatherings, they had dances, they had dinners, and so forth. So with this community being built out in the started in the late 1800s and going into the 1900s, in the early 1930s, this community was really small. There was nothing above Foothill Boulevard except Grove homes. In fact, the only thing above 8th Street at that time was Groves, and the homes that the people lived in that owned the groves. So all the activity was down in the older part of town because it didn't go north. Laverne VFW post 12034 is now home based out of that. We have one of the largest and fastest growing VFW posts in the state of California. It's wonderfully recognized. We have a great commander now, and we have our memorial. We've built the Veterans Memorial. It's a happy place in the city of Laverne. One of the things I'd like to talk about now is you know, we talked about the values in Laverne and how important those are, but I think that when you talk about values, what do those values mean? How does it relate to the community? And so happiness comes from high values, and happiness in events. So we have a lot of events in Laverne ongoing, and there's people thinking of new ones all the time. But in the early 1900s, the volunteer fire department, we had volunteer fire department. We've had a volunteer fire department for longer than we've had a paid volunteer or a paid fire service in Laverne. That's how long the volunteers work in this community. But they started a candy packing for the kids. and they would go around on the one fire engine they had. And remember, it only went as far as 8th Street. So it didn't take too long to cover the whole area, but they would give a bag. And I remember as a kid getting a bag. It was a sack. And now we get a plastic bag, but it was a paper sack. And you get peanuts and some hard candy, and you'd get an apple or an orange in it. And it was Christmas morning. That made Christmas morning. It came with the sirens and the lights and so forth, and the volunteers would get off the truck and come and hand every kid in the community of Laverne got a bag on Christmas morning. And so the fire, you think, what a sacrifice for the volunteers that they would take their Christmas morning and give it out and take their time to do something nice for the community. And that permeates today throughout our community, and it's examples like that have it. Our 4th of July, I'm convinced it's the best 4th of July ever in any of our communities. And the reason I say that is we have between 10 and 15,000 people on our curbs in the little over 2-mile parade route. Well, those aren't all Laverne residents. Those are residents that come because they want to be a part of Laverne's 4th of July. The pancake breakfast that starts it off with the Boy Scouts. They serve over 1,100 pancake breakfasts. Wow, that is just amazing to me. But they're out there cooking, they deliver it, the kids take your trays and put them so you can eat and so forth. It's just a marvelous way to start your 4th of July. Then we have the parade, and we have motorcycles now that we started about 15 years ago that kind of start the parade. That's all things that have been incorporated into this happy place of Laverne and the events. After the parade, there's a big country fair for the kids. And then the Methodist Church does a deep pit barbecue. That Methodist Church deep pit barbecue has existed for over 50 years. And so that is their contribution on that day to our community. So everybody gets involved. And then at night with at the Glenn Davis Stadium, we have over 5,000 people join in the stadium. And if you go anywhere around the stadium, you have to pay to go in, not much. There, Las Flores Park, there's hundreds of people there. Across the street, they're just people all over with their blankets on the grass or someplace in chairs on the cement, watching the fireworks show and being a part of the 4th of July in Laverne. If a friend of mine that I grew up with, L.D. Johnson, and he worked for the city of Laverne, became actually in charge of streets, came up with an idea of a car show. He liked old cars and so forth, and that's how the event Cool Cruise got started. Somebody that grew up in Laverne, somebody that worked in the city of Laverne, and said, how can I make our community better? And he started Cool Cruise, and it's one of the most recognized events for older cars in Southern California. We've had as many as 500 to 600 old cars taking the entire downtown area. Two other events that have started, some communities have it, we certainly have it, and that's our concerts in the park. And we have 5 concerts in the park starting on Father's Day weekend, going through about the middle of August. And there are hundreds and hundreds of people. And if it's a really popular group, it's real difficult to find a place at Heritage Park where the event is. But we've got a stage that's been built there, permanent stage. And now the Police Officers Association for Laverne has started something for kids, and that's movies at the park. So about 8:30 when it gets dark, they have this inflatable screen that they put up, and they have games for the kids beforehand, and they put a kids movie on. So that's become a very popular event too. Well, I kind of started by saying that I'm 5th generation Laverne, but that is not unusual in this community. There are lots and lots of people just like me that are descendants of some of the original people here in Laverne. And what that says about Laverne is nobody wants to leave. The values and what you want for your family exist in this community. It's really funny because younger people say, I want to sprout my rings, and they'll leave Laverne and they'll go someplace else, and they can't wait to get back because this is where they want to raise their kids and be a part of the community that they were a part of when they were growing up. It's really people that care about this community that make this community the best it can be. It's all about the people. It's the citizens' involvement, the caring of the people. That's what makes La Verne, La Verne.